Hello everybody, this is Eric Novice. In this video I'm going to talk about marriage by faith, marriage life, and the harsh reality behind it. So in the last video, I believe, yes, the last video I made, I talked about how the marriage by faith process actually works. So in this video I'm going to talk about, the aftermath, like what's it like to be married in UBF. And to be blunt, marriage life in UBF just sucks. There are some good things in UBF marriage life, but the bad stuff outweighs the good, and I'll explain that in this video. Sorry. So just to go over one of the last points I made in the last video was, so once you get married and after your honeymoon, that on that same Sunday service the next day, you go up to, before the worship service starts, you go to the podium and share your brief testimony. It's not written down or anything like that. Your brief testimony on how you got married by faith, so to speak. And you'll hear two types of testimonies. One that you accepted it wholeheartedly, or two that you probably had some doubt or fatalism, but you overcame it. So all the married shepherds and shepherdesses, they're all required to go to the nighttime meetings. What I mean by that is there's service, then there's the fellowship meeting, and after that there's the nighttime meeting. So the nighttime meeting, like I mentioned in my previous video on marriage by faith, is the meeting after the fellowship meeting. In that meeting, if you ask them, they'll say they do Bible study, which is half true. They do Bible study, but 95% of the meetings are talking about how to arrange the next marriage, how to prepare for the next marriage by faith, so to speak. Yes, like 95%. So what they talk about is how to get, and this is an example, how to get Shepherd Marvin, or just an example, Shepherd Marvin to marry Shepherd Sophia. And so like I mentioned in the last marriage by faith video, I talked about how the UBF quote unquote missionaries, they would take notes. In fact, all UBF quote unquote missionaries, they have a notebook where basically they record information about, often intimate information about all the church members. They have like a notebook where they record church members' information, by information talking about like the criteria of marriage by faith life. Like, their not just their name, but their background, what kind of job they have, what kind of car they have, are they thinking about marriage, are they dating anybody, are they thinking about dating anybody, etc. That's what most of the meetings are about. And so the quote unquote UBF missionary tasks you to help make that marriage by faith happen, is by training the future bride and groom for marriage, by basically breaking their spirit of any thoughts of marriage and have them not think about marriage, period. Which is really kind of shady if you think about it. And they often do without, and you're not supposed to provide any explanation behind it, other than like just because, or this is what you've been thinking about, when that's not the case. So the thing about marriage life in UBF is that you cannot miss any meetings at all. period. You cannot even be late to any meetings. So before, if you missed a meeting or if you got late to a meeting, they'll just let it slide. But once you're married, no, they're not gonna let it slide anymore. The UBF, quote unquote UBF missionary, they're gonna get really pissed off or anxious as to why you're late, why you're not in this meeting, and you cannot get out of it. If you're sick, they still want you to be there. If you're pregnant, they still want you to be there. There's only two ways you can get out of those UBF meetings. One is if you get drafted in the military, or two if you have a broken leg. That's the only way you're excused from those meetings. But than that, they expect you to show up. So, and that's one of the harsh realities. And there's more to talk about in this video. That's one of the main harsh realities of Marriage by Faith Life. You cannot miss any meetings. Also, there are a few good things, like I mentioned, about Marriage by Faith Life. One of the few good things is that you get to prepare for future conferences, holiday services, and symposiums. But there's a catch to that. The thing is, with conferences, you get to help, talk about the theme and whatnot. But at the same time, there's all this responsibility that's put on your shoulder. Like, the UBF missionaries will give you all this responsibility, but they themselves excuse or justify themselves and not lending out a hand. And so there's this lot of weight on your shoulder. And as for the conferences, in order to secure a place, you have to have a certain number of people registered. And so your task is to make sure you get enough people to do that. So that's why whenever conference time comes around, they get very panicky, and there's a lot of extra pressure on you and the sheep as well. That's because I remember my experience. My old teacher would be like, even you just having Bible study with somebody one time, just inviting them to conference, because if you don't get enough people to secure the place, you have to pay extra to secure the place. And who has to pay extra to secure the conference location? You do. And the UBF missionaries, they will not pay extra. They'll pay their part, but they will not go the extra mile. And this is one of those wacky / double standards. UBF missionaries give you all these duties to perform, but themselves won't lift a finger. And that really sucks for you. Another thing is symposiums. You have to prepare symposiums. Well, that's more responsibility on your shoulder. You can nominate people, like who gets to be on the symposium, but you don't have the final say. The UBF missionary, he has the final say on who gets to be in the symposium, who does not. So let's say you want your sheep to be in the symposium, and even though they're like really good speaker, they really know the message and everything, there's a chance they will not get picked. The UBF missionary, he decides who gets to be chosen, who does not. And you kind of have to just go with that. And that kind of sucks, because there's a chance that your sheep may never get picked for a symposium. So that's kind of the downside. And for holiday services, that one is more just like more weight on your shoulder. You also have to find people to perform, to be willing to join the performance. right? You can nominate people, but in the end, the missionary, he has to finally say who gets to be in the performance, who gets to be in the symposium, etc. And then you have to rehearse them and train the people, the sheep, shepherds, etc., for the holiday service. And often cases, you'll be very sleep deprived because you have to stay up really late just trying to figure out everything else. And one of the harsh realities of marriage by faith life, being married in UBF is that you'll never be a missionary. They'll never send you out as a missionary. They'll never send you out as another country where you can pioneer a country, solo or autonomously. I think that's the word. That'll never happen because in UBF, I'll explain more of this in a future video. They only want Koreans as missionaries. So you may be lucky and get chosen to go on a mission trip, and that's like one of the few good things about marriage by life. Like you get to travel, you get to see other places and whatnot. But the downside is that you have to pay for the trip, and you don't get to decide where to go. They tell you where they want you to go, and you can't say no to an invitation either. So if you decline, like even if you're doing it politely, they'll get upset. They'll treat you differently. They'll reprimand you, and or they'll make you go through more training. You see, there's a harsh reality behind mission trips, and mission trips are basically where you go to another country for like a few days, and you just basically have some Bible studies, have some food, etc. And like I said, you had to pay for the trip. By trip, I mean the whole trip, like the plane ticket, the food, the room. You have to pay for all that. They will not. I repeat, UBF does not financially support you at all. So if you're tight on money or anything like that, they will not help you out. They will also not provide you practical support either. So if you become homeless, and there's Andrew Martin, he talked about that in his book. I'll link in the description below. He talked about how he became homeless in UBF, and he told all the UBF leaders, and nobody helped him. Despite the fact that UBF at this point already has a ethics committee, so it makes you really wonder what the real purpose of the ethics community is. It's really just a front. It's just a placeholder. It's just to make themselves look good. Reality, there's no real fundamental change at all. So not only will they not help you when practically things become impossible, but they expect you to do everything you need to do. The meetings, the fishing, teaching Bible studies, etc. And that's a big part of the harsh reality of being married in UBF. See, when you're married with basically your opposite. And I don't mean opposites attract, not like that. You're married to someone who is super loyal or someone who's not, kind of flimsy. And the thing is, you're not going to have your own church or anything like that, but you're basically going to be under the missionary shadow forever. And so the UBF missionary's goal is that you'll be a suitable helper, of course, but the catch is you're a suitable helper to him, the missionary, not to each other or to Jesus. That's the catch. So the reason why UBF missionaries arrange those kind of marriages is so that like you can easily control the married couple, right? So you are expected to basically spy on your spouse, your partner, your coworker, so to speak. And if they're losing faith or anything, or they do anything suspicious, you are expected to report to the UBF missionary. And one thing I almost forgot to mention is that once you become married, the UBF missionary becomes your shepherd slash Bible teacher. So whoever, unless he was already teaching you before, whoever teaches you prior to being married, they don't teach you Bible studies anymore. The UBF missionary, he does that now. And so if you start rebelling, or you start missing meetings, or you do anything that basically the UBF missionary doesn't like or doesn't want you to do, he'll do not only one of the three things I mentioned, he will also he'll threaten you with divorce. He'll threaten you to have you divorced from your coworker. Yes, UBF missionaries have actually done this in the past. And for the record, I personally have not been married in UBF, so what I know about marriage by faith life is based on what ex members have told me, those who got married, and from stuff I witnessed when I was in El Community UBF. Another thing they'll do is that if they feel like you're not being obedient, loyal, and in the program, so to speak, what they'll also do is they'll literally and figuratively separate you from your spouse. Like, if you go to service, they'll have you sit at the far end, far away from your spouse as possible. And what the UBF mission will do is he'll rearrange the meeting groups, so that you can't be in the same fellowship meeting as your coworker. In the name of Jesus, in the justification that, oh, you're being rebellious, you're losing faith, you're in need of prayer. Basis, when that's probably not the case at all. Okay. So the other 5% we talk about in the nighttime meetings is that whenever a crisis happens, which is, you can't necessarily cover it up, but what they do is they try to help the church move on. Like I mentioned before, they also talk about preparing for holiday services, conferences, symposiums, and like. And also, in the meetings, they'll talk about when somebody leaves, they mention them one time, and that's just it. Also, if someone were to leave that UBF church, you're tasked to basically silence that person by whatever it means. Whether it is making them feel guilty, threatening them. Yes, threats. Threats, taking on their website, like doing whatever it takes to silence their voice. That's what the UBF missionary will task you to do. And, when doing all this, like, there's no breather, there's no breathing room. The only room to breathe or breather you'll ever get in marriage life is your honeymoon, which is less than 24 hours, and the other breather you'll get is if you go under the radar. The only way to be under the radar as a married shepherd in UBF is if you keep up with all the appearances, and that's when the UBF missionary leaves you alone. By leaves you alone, I don't mean like they ignore you completely, but you're basically on a good standing with them, so to speak. And there's a way you can actually pull it off, like you can fake it, but oh, sorry about that. That's a message from a computer. But yeah, that's like, damn, I almost forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, basically silence anybody who criticizes the church. That's what you're tasked to do. And something you'll. Oh yeah, I remember now. So basically, you fly under the radar. There's a way you can fake it, but you have to be kind of clever to pull it off. Damn. One of the other harsh realities of marriage by faith life is that you're on call. Most on call. So what I mean by this is, so let's say, if someone sends a mass email to church, basically criticizing the church, the UBF missionary, they'll call you to have a meeting, um, after afternoon or very late at night, and expect all of the married people to show up. No questions asked, just to talk about a letter, even though it could have waited till the next morning or the next day, so to speak. And this happened in El Community BF back in 2016, September 2016, where basically someone sent us mass email to the whole church, and they had this meeting on to talk about it. And it was like 11 p.m., close to midnight. They had this meeting, and all the senior and married people were there, without question. And that sucks because you probably had a long week, a long day, and you finally get to rest, and then they call you to go to this meeting. Like I mentioned, you can't say no to that. Say no, the UBA missionary is gonna confront you, like, why did you not show up? Was something wrong? Or which they'll act sympathetic, but if you can't really reason with them, with the UBF missionary, even though you have good reason, even if it's reasonable, or you have good justification for not showing to me, let's say for the late night meeting, the on call meeting, like let's say I'm just trying to catch up my sleep, they will not accept that. And like the harsh reality of UVF married couples is that you become miserable. You start to erode hourly and figuratively. What I mean, like start eroding away, is that you'll notice they seem happy at first glance, but then over time you're gonna notice that they smile less and less, and they start changing personality, start becoming more bland. And I noticed that some of the married people, even at my UBA church I used to go to, they start looking depressed, kind of. Like the joy is kind of sucked out of them. Like there's less color in their face because sleep deprivation, all the responsibilities they gotta do, etc. And another thing is you're expected to basically spy on the other members, not just on each other, not necessarily with each other married people, but with like the younger sheep and your spouse, like what they're doing what are they up to, that kind of thing. Because the UB missionary never confronts like those at the bottom of the hierarchy. The only exception the UB missionary ever confronts someone like a young junior shepherd or sheep is if they're teaching them, or if they ever or if the UB missionary feels like they ever wronged like a psychogen or his child or their children. That's the only time they confront you directly. But even then, they would bring like one or two of the married people, you know, and they kind of basically gang up on you and ambush you like that. And that's another thing I need to mention is they also do ambush meetings with younger sheep, those are or junior shepherds. It's happened to me personally, where I got ambushed by several of the married people. And basically, I'll talk about that more in another video. Basically, what happened was, they didn't want me doing something they didn't like, and I didn't agree with it personally. But I was like, okay, fine, I won't do this anymore, as long as you leave me alone. and that was the deal, and they didn't keep their end, and that was kind of a catalyst to me leaving. But that's a whole story about that another time. So that's the harsh reality of marriage by faith life. You have to do all those things, spy on younger members, gain information about them, so you can help the UBF missionary arrange their marriage, have their marriage by faith, so to speak, in the future. And this is like in advance. Like, you already know this person will marry with this. And if it doesn't go well, then you have to kind of rearrange the plans, etc. Now, do the married people take notes? Yes, they do take notes. They take mental notes. Do they take physical notes? Maybe not. I've never seen any married couples take notes. I've seen UBF quote unquote missionaries take notes, physical notes, but I never seen any UBF native married shepherds take notes. Okay. And as far as second gens when they get married, their life like their how they get married, marriage by faith, it's kind of a mystery to me because I've never seen a second gen get married. I'm not sure how it works. I've never talked to a second gen who got married. But from the impression I got from married people who left, they seem to have more leniency. And what I've noticed with second gen marriages is that they always marry another second gen. For them to marry a native is extremely rare. Like, not even 1%, less than 1%. But second gens typically marry another second gen. And there's like somebody comments in one of my articles, and I'll link it that in the description below, where he talks about like there's politics involved a little bit, because they want UBF missionaries want their second gen, their child, to marry a second gen of another prominent UBF missionary leader. So as far as second gen marriages, that's basically all what I really know about. I'm not too sure exactly how they get married. Supposedly they're allowed to date, but I personally cannot confirm that. And that's true. It's most likely controlled. But yeah. So that's the harsh reality. That's all the stuff you gotta go through when you're married by faith, when you're in that marriage life. That's all the stuff you gotta go through. So if you're a married person watching this video, if you're someone who's left, if there's anything I missed, I'll leave a comment down below. If you're unapologetic, I would like for you to refute what I've said in the comments with undisputed evidence. That's right. So that's the end of this, pretty much the end of this video. And another video I'm gonna do is about how to leave, because the longer you stay in marriage for late, not only you'll be deprived of that life in you, but you'll physically suffer as well. Like, you'll suffer both physically and mentally as well. Physically with all the work you gotta do, and then mentally with all the sleep deprivation. And like I mentioned, UBF will not provide any support at all. Oh yeah, there's one more thing I forgot to mention in this video, is children. You can have children, but you need to get the UBF missionaries' permission to do that. And even then, they only allow like a certain amount of children that you can have. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot bring your children to the meetings. You cannot bring them to the conferences, Bible conferences. So you're expected to find a babysitter or someone to take care of them when you go to your nighttime meetings, when you go to a Bible conference. And UBF does not provide any babysitting service or anything like that. You have to do that on your own. There's some old chapter UBF churches like Chicago UBF and Bonn UBF where they have like a children's Bible fellowship, a CBF, but even those are kind of bizarre in a way. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's just room for more it's just room for child indoctrination and abuse. That's all I say. That's all I can say I know about CBF. Right now, this video is really coming to an end this time. So if there's anything I missed or anything anything that we should like expanded upon, leave a comment down below. If anybody who is a UBF apologetic, a defender who sees the video, I'd like you to refute any of these claims that down the video with undisputed evidence. And until next time.